part of being different than the norm, and that's healthy. The old logic of a young man should be a Democrat, an old man should be a Republican. The young man wants to change the world. The old man's tired of paying for it. That's
Interesting.
just who we are.
Welcome to Third Side Convo with your host, Bob Phipps. Your panelists today are Tiberius Boy, Jeff Nolan, Chris Whitney, and Mike Hatley. And now, your host, Bob Phipps.
Welcome, everyone, to the Third Side Convo. We've got an interesting question tonight. What we're going to be asking is, what happened to the Wonder Years? Now, obviously, I'm a boomer, which I now understand is an insult, but that's okay. I can't do anything about it. And I lived through it. And life did seem to be simpler back then. Neighbors knew your name. Trust me, if you got in trouble, they knew your name, they knew your parents' name, and knew their phone number, okay? People owned their own homes. But let's get real. Were those years ever really that wonderful? Or is it just nostalgia gaslighting us? These days, the vibe feels a little different. There was a poll that just came out that showed nearly half of young people. Now, they think some wild stuff, a little different than we did. They thought that murdering CEOs might actually be justified or be fine. Is that just frustration with greedy corporations? Or have our values shifted in ways we don't even quite understand yet? So tonight, we're going to be digging into why the so-called Wonder Years feel so far away and whether we can get them back or if they were just a comforting myth all along. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, I'd like to start here with our young person on the panel because, he's a young guy. He's clearly the youngest person on the panel, and he is a young person. So what do you think, Tiberius? Tiberius, are things that different? Do you think that when we talk about, walking 6 miles, both ways to school, uphill, in the snow, that was just garbage? What's your idea of young people these days?
Yeah, going uphill both ways. I remember that was one of the ones. But as, a kid, something, I'm 13, so I'm on the lower side of knowing, what the thing is. Although I did do some research. And I have seen that some videos on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, or some other things are making fun of part of it. A lot of people make memes about it and about how the guy's name is Luigi and stuff. But as a kid, I see that this is a big problem because I don't think people should be celebrating it, but people still do. What we can do about it, I don't really know. But that's just my opinion.
All right, Mike, what's your opening? What hit you the most about this incident and the poll that related to it?
I think what hit me the most was the fact that we have a lot of young people that think it's okay simply because they have been raised in a generation where things are easy to come by. So if there's any difficulty, it's easy to find the easy way out. So rather than actually dealing with the difficulty of whatever his situation was, he lashed out in an act of rage rather than being sensible in this. And yes, the name Luigi just makes it all come full circle.
Gotcha. All right, Jeff, your opening thoughts on this?
I understand it. I don't celebrate it. I don't condone it, but I absolutely understand it. Just look at the response. CEO gets shot. The world is mobilized. A hotline for CEOs in New York is set up in case they feel threatened. Helicopters are in the sky. Does that not just underline what I assume, and granted, this is an assumption, that the gunman was on about?
Yeah.
What is the dividing line of what is murder?
Right. Okay.
So again, yeah. I understand it.
Yeah.
I don't want people shot. I don't want people hurt ever.
Yeah, I don't think they were celebrating back when Yeah, back when we were a kid, and you remember the protests of the Vietnam War and stuff like that, Jeff. There
How
were
old do you think I am, Bob?
Well, you've heard about it. It got just beyond it. You're right. Probably not as old as me, that's for sure. And after that response, certainly you aren't as old as me. But you know what I mean. There were people that did die during protests and things like that. And I don't think there were a lot of people, as many people around celebrating it. Chris, let's go to you for your opening thoughts on this whole poll and issue of young people.
Yeah, the poll kind of caught me by surprise that people would actually think this was a good thing that happened. If you're going to go back to the '60s, it was all about taking it to the man, right? Anybody who was in a position of power was evil, by definition. So I think this is a little taste of flashback to the '60s. Although I just don't think our culture is there today. It was surprising to see that category of super young, but the goal of the super young is to not do whatever their dad did. That's your goal. If your dad drank beer, you'll drink wine. That's just part of being different than the norm. And that's healthy. The old, logic of, a young man should be a Democrat and an old man should be a Republican. The young man wants to change the world. The old man's tired of paying for it. That's just who we are.
Now, Tiberius, you actually told me that you kind of researched this a little bit and that there were a lot of people you don't really believe basically. So in other words, that we'll just say the poll slanted. Is that an issue in social media because everything is anonymous?
Because everything is anonymous, sometimes on YouTube Shorts, random people are making fun of it, and random people are saying that they celebrate it, even though we don't really know who those people are. I'm not saying that the poll is slanted, because a lot of people don't know about the poll. Like, I didn't even know the poll until about yesterday or something, and I don't really know much about the poll, which I know a lot about the situation, what happened, and why he did it, which I somewhat understand. But the fact that people are making fun of it and then also celebrating it, which is different types of situations on people who think about it.
Okay. Why is it, do you think, that people celebrate this, Mike?
I think it's social media. And the reason why I blame social media is because nobody has any rules. Like, the rules are so lackluster when it comes to social media. You can say whatever and there's no accountability, right? And also there's an opportunity for people to just voice opinions that there's no basis on. They're just saying things that doesn't matter. They don't have to have any fact behind it, right? So I think social media just gives a great platform to say whatever you feel. And again, there's just no accountability.
Why is there a versus me and Mike up here? Why is that happening?
Well, what we're trying to do is if you've got something to say, that's the time to say it, because we've got both of you on there, and he put someone on the right, someone on the left. It's just a way so we can get some banter back and forth. Because, Jeff, okay, so going back to the not so long ago time when you were a youth as opposed to me, can you imagine this same type of discourse happening amongst people sitting around without doing it anonymously?
Yes.
Really?
Well, I mean, I would say that it was underlined in the movie Network when the Norman Peele, was that his name, character got up and said, "I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." Is this not akin to that somewhat?
Well, maybe,
I think so.
Maybe, but I think everybody was mad at the situation at that time. He was just, that's an incredible movie, but I don't think it's necessarily the same thing. We're talking about celebrating somebody getting killed.
It's easy to perceive it that way.
Okay.
But I think writ large, it's not the celebration. And again, this is just my not as old as Bob opinion. I think that people, it's not so much a celebration of a man getting gunned down, which is objectively awful. I think that it is absolutely being able to identify with the intense frustration that apparently the gunman was doing this for. None of us know why he really did this, even though it seems very obvious and we're probably correct.
Right.
We don't know that for sure yet. So, and this is something that with the rise of, those of us who grew up before the internet didn't have to deal with this, where everybody jumps over themselves to have a hot take 1 second after it's done, and you end up with the worst misinformation It's, it's crazy.
Brilliant.
And I think that's why when things like this happen, I tend to hang back in the cut.
Yeah.
And wait until we have real
But the
information.
shock value is so much less than it used to be.
Oh yeah,
Right?
you have to go
I mean, you
nuts
watch
to shock
Deadpool,
people now.
Wolverine and Deadpool. They're making jokes and they're cutting arms off and heads are off and blood's everywhere. And so when it gets to social media, there's no humanity in social media.
Absolutely.
Everybody's trying to get clicks. And
You remember the show Jackass?
The guy on the street is as good as CNN, right?
Yeah, it's
they're
crazy.
trying to get clicks too. The more outrageous, the more people listen.
Jackass all over again. And when that becomes a highly touted show to the point that YouTube has to come out and say, don't do this, jumping off of a roof can actually kill you. When you have to start, saying stuff like that in order to keep people from hurting themselves, like we've lost what humanity actually is, because there's no sense of any responsibility. I hate to be the old guy, keep talking about responsibility, but we have to figure out a way that we can have an uncomfortable discourse without somebody feeling a need that a gun is the answer.
Well, and that's what we're doing on the show. I mean, this is kind of my impossible dream, is to get people together so that we can actually talk about things, and people of different ideology and of ages, obviously. So we'll be right back. We got to take a break for our sponsor, but make sure you please subscribe on, YouTube, on Facebook, and go to thirdsideconvo.com. So we'll be right back after our message from our sponsor.
Aw, Dad, my computer's slow again and I can't play my games.
Call Your Computer Solutions today, and we will scan for viruses and clean that computer up remotely and make it fast again. Our phone number is 407-826-0810.
Thanks, Dad. My computer's fast again. Now I can do my homework. Thanks for calling Your Computer Solutions at 407-826-0810. The Tiberius Show would like to thank Boggy Creek Airboat Adventures for being one of our sponsors. I got to go on an airboat and saw a real gator. I even got to go to the gem mine and mine for some gems. We ate a steak dinner at the restaurant and even got some gator bites. If you want to have a blast with the entire family, I suggest you go to www.bcairboats.com right now. Get your tickets today. The website again is bcairboats.com.
I have an idea that kids these days get their information in different ways than I used to get it. I mean, we got the Orlando Morning Sentinel and the Orlando Evening Star, and that was where we got our information from. We watched Walter Cronkite. I hear kids get stuff a little bit differently these days. Tiberius, I hear there's stuff called like memes and clips. No one actually watches. Like, who's going to even watch this whole show? They're just going to watch a clip of me insulting Jeff just because his hair is as white as mine is. So, yeah, exactly. Sorry about that, Jeff. Exactly. Tiberius, what is different today about kids getting news? We used to read newspapers. What do you do? What do they do?
So kids nowadays, of what I've seen, is how they get information is either from school or social media. Now, you're right about the clips. They're mainly called TikToks, YouTube Shorts, or Shorts for short. But people use that as a way to learn about information. Now, the information they're learning, that's subjective. That's something different.
Okay.
That's what they want to watch. Now, what I watch is like some stuff about space sometimes with like the Neil guy or something. And just like some stuff, and I even see art and like your shorts for Third Side Combo, or even my radio show, my shorts. Those things I use to learn about what I can fix or what is about politics right now, which is why I watch this show. But yeah, so that's really what kids use nowadays. They don't really use the newspapers, or they sometimes use the news, but that's really for like teenagers and stuff. I'm sorry to get into that.
Gotcha. Chris, I hear you have kids, right?
Oh, we have 4 kids, which all have spouses, and I think there's 6.5 grandkids.
Well, but back when were cell phones and the internet around, when your kids were still under your umbrella, we'll say?
Yeah, my kids were at the very beginning of cell phones, so they really became electronic leashes. You don't answer the phone, I take your cell phone away. But I think media is transformed. I don't get any news from I rarely watch Fox or CNN. It's all what's coming through Twitter because that's the unfiltered version. You know, if we watched all through the elections, whatever channel you watch, that person was winning. You know, by landslides, and all the world was wonderful in their world. And if you watch Twitter or X, you know, there's debate going on, right? And you know, some of it's good. You know pretty quick, you know, what's crap. But if you want to watch mainstream media, all you do is you click on Fox and you click on CNN, and if they're not talking about the same story, neither one is probably the truth.
Jeff, what do you think about
Chris,
that?
I think there's an interesting historical sort of allegory to that. And I've always been fascinated by this, just as a nerd. When you look at the Nixon-Kennedy debates, it was almost a 50-50 split. People who listened to it on the radio thought Nixon won. People who watched it on TV thought Kennedy won. And I've always found that one of the most fascinating sort of media phenomena of the 20th century. I think that sort of speaks to what you were just saying, in that, you know, you said whoever happened to be on at any given moment was the winner. And, you know, you see it in Congress when there's hearings or something. You just see one congressperson after another, instead of having any real insight or questioning, they're just trying to get their soundbite out. Soundbite. And it's a real problem, and it can breed cynicism. If I was Tiberius's age, or if I was 20, I would be even more cynical than I am, and I am deeply cynical.
Yeah, I believe it's the short form. I mean, shorts is the right word because it's the headline, and if you click on most of the headlines, there's not 2 paragraphs worth of fact. It's just a headline. It gets you to click. You know, I think if you watch the debates, you have a different opinion than when you watch both debaters, and then you start listening to the commentary. And it's like, that's not the way I heard it. You know, when one of the candidates did a 3-hour interview on another podcast, if you listen to the whole interview, that was a dialogue of intelligent conversation. If you watch the sound bites on either network,
He's new, so we're not shooting him for that one, Jeff. Okay, specific, you know, or his indirect reference. He'll learn. Don't worry.
No,
Chris is a great guy.
My motion was whether it was an intelligent dialogue.
I know exactly what you were because he was referring to somebody
depth,
specific.
Right?
We got it.
It was in depth. There were
I got it.
answers.
Mike, what do you think? I mean,
I'm
Mike,
sorry, Chris. I interrupted you.
No,
your thought.
you're supposed to. No. We're okay.
Long-form answers.
We're okay.
You know,
We're
in the
okay.
old days, a newspaper could write a long article.
Right.
It was gone through the editor. It was fact checked. It was made right before it ever got printed in the paper. Today, I mean, every 30 seconds, if I read a news story and it's 4 hours old, I don't really believe it anymore. Right?
Yeah.
I'll read the one that's 1 hour old.
Well, Michael, let me ask you, since
yesterday's news, you line the birdcage with it.
Hey, Mike, since your kids are a little younger, right? How do you deal with social media and possibly restriction? I mean, we could spend the next hour on how Joe Boy controls Tiberius's social media, but I don't think he wants to get into that. But do you actually? Yeah, he doesn't want to do that. So, Mike, do you actually try to put some controls over that social media for them?
Well, yeah. So my kids definitely are a little bit younger. So they all had cell phones by the time they were 10, 11. So I think that's kind of how it was in my household. So again, the electronic leash type still. So they've always had the cell phone, but we tried to keep them away from social media, and in particular TikTok, for as long as we could, simply because there's just so much misinformation there, because there's no guidance. Again, we're talking about a situation where the media controls so much. My question is, if this Luigi dude had looked really like a real murderer, right? He sort of has that wealthy, suave, I can do well type look. My thing is, would we have the exact same response if he looked like the dude that you are afraid is going to rob you at the bus stop?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing as when the girl kidnapped has blonde hair, right?
Exactly. And how much the media controls that, right? If the kidnapped person is fairly attractive, right?
Right.
Then that's going to be on national news, especially if she has children. Oh my gosh, right? That we got to find her right away, right? But if it's a homeless lady that was just living at the bus stop, I mean, if we find her, great. If not,
Yeah, there won't be a helicopter looking.
No helicopters.
No dogs, no anything like that. Yeah, I almost wish that we could, when we take people, we also had a school shooting recently, and all this stuff. I wish we didn't publish anything about these people that are doing that. I wish there was a way we could just black out all that stuff such that the person was not, But and I know kids these days, aren't kids also more interested in like real crime and stuff like that too, Tiberius?
I am, and also there's no really real way in order to get that off the media, because the way to do that would to not, people who actually lived through that and actually got damaged by it want their vengeance by having it be on the news.
God. Well, in a little bit, we're going to talk about, what are some possible things we can do. I mean, I don't know if we can turn this thing around a little bit, but it would be nice if we could get it headed in the right direction. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and take our next break, and what we'll be doing is it's kind of looking at, is there anything that can be done to possibly reverse this? And so please subscribe if you're watching after the fact. Go on, check out the other clips. They're hopefully not disinformation, but we got some good stuff on there for past panels, and we'll be right back after a break from our sponsor.
Corona Cigar Company is your one-stop shop for all your cigar needs. Whether that's a brand new humidor, a box of those new cigars you've been waiting for, a top-of-the-line cutter or lighter, a place to enjoy the finest cigars and spirits with friends, or the only cigars grown right here in the Sunshine State, we've got you covered. Come visit one of our retail locations for the ultimate cigar experience. Visit us online at coronacigar.com.
Oak Ridge Gun Range is a family-oriented shooting range that has been in business for over 30 years. They specialize in basic firearm training and offer numerous services such as consignments, gun trades, gunsmithing, and concealed weapon classes. I even got my training for gun safety at Oak Ridge Gun Range. Great customer service, and firearm safety is what they do best. So find out more at oakridgegunrange.com.
One of the things I wish we could do is I guess, I don't know if it's not really treat the kids differently. We've got education issues that we can probably talk about, but what really kills me these days is kids don't have the free time we used to have when we were in school. I mean, if we could actually just sit back and imagine that kids these days only on social media, it's just not going to turn out right. So how do we... what can we do? Tiberius, I know that, again, you go under a lot of restrictions sometimes, your dad, because he loves you, right? What are those restrictions that you think he puts you on that possibly other kids should be on because they don't have any restrictions? Is there something that you'd actually appreciate what he's trying to do for you? Sorry to put you on the spot on this one, but you're just too great to have around.
Well, my dad does have a lot of restrictions. He uses the app called Quest Studio in order to limit time on the computer and the phone, which he can block apps from. He can do all sorts of stuff. He's blocked TikTok. At least I think so. Yeah, I have 2 hours on my phone, which part of that is it's a bit tough because the Quest Studio is not the best app to use. He thinks it is, but it's not the best. I agree. But I will say TikTok should definitely be banned until they're about not 16, but around 14, like my age. Because really, they should learn about social media and what it can do to people's lives. I've seen it. Multiple people have seen it. My dad's seen it. I'm sure most people on this panel have. It really ruins some people at some times. But at kids who I see who are on social media definitely should not have it, and sometimes it should not be allowed for them to be on.
Okay. Michael, what's your thoughts on that? I know you said you tried to restrict it a little bit. Oh, you're muted. Oop.
I definitely believe we should totally have a complete ban on TikTok, at least until they're like 14, maybe even 15 in some cases. And the reason why I say that is because there's no way that you can mentally be prepared for what all that you can see, right? There's certain things on TikTok that I think should be age restricted, right? Because there's you can be scrolling, looking at one thing, and then your social media, it will just update the algorithm, and now you're looking at stuff that a 13-year-old should absolutely not be looking at.
Okay, you see that the government's going to have to do that. I mean, the social media companies aren't going to do that on their own, and that gets into issues, obviously.
Yeah, I don't want the government being the ones responsible for anything. I think it should be a panel of parents who actually has some skin in the game. I don't want the government raising my kids on any aspect whatsoever ever.
Jeff, what do you think?
If you live in Florida, January 1st it's starting. So saddle up.
Oh. Yeah, they've actually passed some laws on that, right?
Well, no, I mean age verification starts January 1st in Florida.
Okay.
So, I mean, Bob, if you want to go on, Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or something, you're going to have to show your ID.
Okay.
Are you down for that?
Is that?
I do have one.
Yeah, Tiberius went and got an ID just for that reason. Chris, do you want the government controlling the social media?
I do not, but going back to the question on kids and social media, I heard a comedian years ago tell a story about how Little League Baseball has destroyed the country. And his premise was that, before organized Little League Baseball, all the kids would go down to the corner, dirt lot, bring their glove and their bat and have to earn their way on the field. And today's kids, a bunch of parents in a smoke-filled room, divide all the kids, pick tallest and shortest, and put together these championship travel teams. And the kid gets 3 innings in the infield, 3 innings in the outfield, and a snack at the end, whether they win or lose. And the little ones don't keep score. Before, you didn't want to be the last kid picked. The 2 popular kids would stand there and they would, continue to pick out a pile of kids, and you did not want to be the last one. You played harder. You were there because you wanted to be, not because your parents dropped you off for 3 hours of babysitting at a Little League baseball practice.
Hey, Mike,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I find that interesting. When you first started saying that, Chris, I thought Little League ruined everything. That's stupid. And then within one sentence, you made me go, well, yeah, okay, I see where you're coming from.
It's kids controlling their future. It's riding your bike, out and don't come home until the streetlights come on.
Yeah,
right?
I mean those days are over.
We don't let our kids cross the
scared
street.
Parents into thinking that every to catch a predator is the reality of every street. When in truth, the era we grew up in was objectively more dangerous than it is now. But that doesn't matter. I mean, I understand, the desire to be overprotective or protective, I guess I should say.
But you keep the children in the cocoon, they're not getting their natural vaccination of playing in dirt, right?
It's just, I think aside from societal things and the way things have gone, it's not what kids are largely into.
But why is that though? That's got to be a question. That what happened fundamentally in our society where kids are not happy about going outside to go play in the dirt. Like we used to put rocks in our pockets. We had worms and everything. Like our moms never knew what was
coming. Catch a lizard and bring it in the house to know your mother.
Absolutely. My wife's cousin, he used to catch little crayfish at the creek, right? Kids don't even know how to handle stuff. Like you get pinched the first
They're
time.
not allowed to get wet.
Oh God, I'm done.
I know. Tiberius, you want to say something? Go.
Changes the culture, right?
Yeah, well, as a kid, I will say some kids don't want to go outside because of how sweaty they get or how much they want to stay online because of how much time they spend on it. Now, I will admit sometimes I do want to stay more inside, either if it's raining or if it's something's going on outside that I don't want to see. Sometimes if I'm bored, I do go outside. But a lot of times if I'm bored, I will definitely go on my computer and start playing some video games because sometimes it is a lot more fun than going outside and doing some hard work.
Yeah, but in the Wonder Years, your friends were outside. That's where they were. And when you hung around kids, that's where they were. Basically, it taught you social skills. Kids can't learn social skills through the internet. You really can't. When we were kids, Jeff would be out with friends, and sometimes he was the oldest person, sometimes he's the youngest. But one thing I can guarantee, if he acted like a jerk, they wouldn't invite him out next time. The social skills we learned from being in different groups from time to time were invaluable, and I believe is one of the worst things that's ever happened to our country is the fact that we keep the kids stay inside and they do not get out and socialize with other kids and just be kids. It's gotten horrible. Well, this show, it's an incredible show. I want to thank my new guests, Tiberius. You were exceptional. Mike and Chris, y'all were really good. I just hate that we only had 30 minutes to talk about this subject. And I think that maybe we're going to have another show maybe one day on maybe what can we do about it. So please like and subscribe on Facebook. Go to thirdsideconvo.com. And next week we'll have another topic to talk about and bring ideologically diverse people together to get agreement amongst us. My impossible dream. Thank you very much. See you next week.